Welcome back to the channel, it's me, your Pass Out, and today I am forcing my girlfriend to play Geometry Dash. This is the second part in the series. In the last video, we forced her to play Hades. I have spun the wheel, and unfortunately, her worst nightmare has come true. She now has to play my favorite game, Geometry Dash. She spent quite a while watching me tap, tap, tap away and slam my desk because I love it so much. It's a great game. If you aren't familiar with the rules of the video, it's essentially she's going to play a total of 9 hours throughout the week. She starts with a mandatory 2 hours on both the first and last day, and every other day she has to play at least 1 hour. If she's enjoying the game and she wishes to, she can continue playing more, and every single day she'll give the game a rating, and then at the last day we'll get an overall rating and put it up on the leaderboard. Right now, Cult of the Lamb is at the top. This is the game that she played before the series. It's her favorite game of all time, but too bad for her, this is nothing like that. Hi, Editor Sal here. Previous Sal left out a few things because he's a fucking idiot. When it comes to the wheel, it is completely randomized, and you guys can actually contribute to the wheel. Go down to the comments or to my Discord, link in the description. You guys can leave suggestions for games for me to put on the wheel so that she might end up actually playing it. And as well, while we're doing the challenge, I'm actually not allowed to give her any tips or any hints, so she's just got to figure out everything on her own. We're trying to figure out what games are actually good for new players to get into, because one of the hardest things for games to do is to teach new mechanics to players without straight up telling you. It's the old school rule of show don't tell. Anyway, back to previous Sal. I'm done. She's also got like seizures or some shit, so this is like the perfect game for her, you know. We might have an on-screen death. The only thing that she's familiar with when it comes to Geometry Dash is all of the times she's seen me play it. And sometimes I'll go through and watch Geometry Dash videos. So she's not that familiar with it, but she understands sort of the concept. For this video, we're going to start her at Stereo Madness, the first level. And throughout the first 5 days, we're going to see how far she can get throughout the main levels. And then, if she hasn't made that much progress by day 6 and 7, I'm going to force her to play some custom levels, as well as trying some of my favorite levels, like Deadlocked. Now, none of this is to say that I myself am a professional Geometry Dasher. I've only ever beaten 3 demons, and 2 of those were the mains. So the only non-main level that I've beaten that's a demon is I Spy With My Little Eye. And if you are a big Geometry Dash player, you know it looks hard, but it's not. So yes, I will be judging the hell out of her this entire video, but keep in mind, I'm not the best either. Without further ado, let's stop gargling on balls and just get into the video. Let's get into day number 1. She didn't take her long at all to get right up to the first ship part. However, as soon as she did get to the ship part, it was an immediate panic because of the new game mode that she was not ready for. However, the level design is actually really good because it allows them enough time to get comfortable with the new gameplay of the ship without throwing obstacles at them. However, as soon as the obstacles come up, it's panic all over again. At around attempt 20, she's already complaining that her fingers are cramping and that the gameplay is getting super repetitive and annoying. She also states at this point that she isn't a fan of the colors because they're hurting her eyes, and also she's not a fan of the side-scroller format. This is going to be a very rough week for her. About 35 attempts in, and having to hear the same song on repeat over and over again was already driving her insane. This woman genuinely thinks that 35 attempts is a lot. She has no fucking clue. She starts getting really close to the end pretty frequently. She's consistently dying right before the last ship part, between 80 and 87%. And I mean consistently. This happens a lot. There's something about this one part that is just, this is her kryptonite, man. If she fucking hates it. It's around this point that she has to take an Advil to even continue playing. At exactly attempt 77, she accidentally takes the second coin route, and it throws her off completely. It's the immediate panic of, I should have died there, but then you don't, and then you die right after because you panic. Attempt 121. I've never heard this woman rage before, but she raged pretty hard. She dies right before the last portal, and it sends her into a bit of a fury. She is fucking frustrated. Frustrated enough that she has to take a break to eat and recoup because at this point she believes she'll only be able to get up to the 5th level by the end of the week. However, after coming back and after 10 more attempts, she beats the level. Turns out taking a step away and taking a break is enough to completely reset your brain, and after a total of 131 attempts, Stereo Madness has been completed, which then moves us on to one of my favorite levels, Back on Track, baby. Unfortunately, the recording for Back on Track on day 1, it for some reason glitched the hell out, and we were just stuck on the main menu the entire time. You can still hear everything she says in the background. It's just visually everything was fucked. So I'm going to use some clips that I've made and just splice it together. The game immediately throws a new mechanic at you, this being the pad. Initially, she actually tries to jump over the pad, I assume thinking that it's something bad. However, when she dies at the spike, she realizes that there's actually no way to jump over everything, so she just runs into it and then realizes, oh, the pad makes you bounce. However, when she gets further into the level, she gets to the jump pads that actually push you into the spikes. And when she hits the spikes, she she actually says out loud, oh, not all yellow things are good. This is a perfect example of the game teaching you that yes, these things are meant to jump you and they are good, but also not all of them are going to help you. Some of them are going to kill you. So it's kind of teaching the player to be aware of their surrounding. And this is something that the community calls sight reading. And after only 10 attempts at this level, she's already saying, oh, this one's going to take me way longer. After a while, it became very clear that the jump pads are going to be a consistent confusion for her as she tries to constantly figure out if they're good or bad, as well as struggling with tapping instead of holding. This is the thing that's going to consistently get her killed this entire fucking video. She knows how to hold, she's figured out holding, but she just way prefers tapping, and this gets her killed, I'd say like 90% of the time, because she's just not quick enough with the tapping. At 70 attempts, she's died at 26% at least 10 times now, and she's yet to get past it. Getting up to 131 attempts, the amount of attempts it took her to beat Stereo Madness, and the most she's gotten so far is 29%. I think it's safe to say that this is going to be a rough one for this woman. However, 8 attempts later, she gets all the way to 40%, a pretty big jump and a huge morale boost for her. She went from being miserable and not believing in herself at all to she's suddenly locked the fuck in. At around 174 total attempts, she gets to 48% right before the ship part. It's around this point in the level that she's actually dying in that first 25% a lot less, something that she was struggling with a lot in the beginning. Only 20 attempts later, and she finally gets to and completes the entire ship part. This pushes her pretty far forward, all the way to 67%. She's seeming pretty confident with the ship gameplay at this point. I'm curious to see how she'll deal with it in future levels, because the skill ceiling on the ship is pretty high. However, as of right now, she actually loves the ship gameplay. Only 10 attempts later, and she's already jumped up to 76%. I'm not sure what's clicked in her brain at this point, but she is very consistently getting to at least 65%. It feels like something inside of her has just awoken and this demon has been released. However, after approximately 50 more attempts, her mandatory 2 hours have been completed, and she hasn't quite progressed past the 76% mark yet. However, she decides to continue playing for another 40 minutes over her time limit, and at a total of 346 attempts for the day, the most she gets up to is 77%, 1% over her already high score. And this was enough to break her, and she had to throw in the towel. For today, she's rated Stereo Madness a 6 out of 10, and she is not looking forward to having to play Back on Track tomorrow. It doesn't actually take her too long to get right back into her groove, getting back to her previous high score pretty early on. By around attempt 408, she was very clearly struggling with the pillars around 70%. She swears that she's not jumping or holding as she's going through the pillars, but I don't believe her. She's just a little autistic. About 20 attempts later, she finally gets past the 77% mark, but she dies at 80 because her brain just like stopped working. She just assumed that she was gonna die there because she's died there so many times, and then when she didn't, she completely panicked and didn't know what to do. And who would have guessed she was holding the button as she was going through. Once she stopped doing that, she stopped dying there. It's around this point as well that she says, like, I know I can beat this level today, and that's a level of confidence that we love around here. I think we've all gotten to that point in the level where we've been banging our head against the wall for so long, but then there's just a point where you're like, oh, I can beat this now. Only 10 attempts later, she flies all the way to 91%. However, after dying here, the frustration is really seeping through at this point, but she is still determined. I can see the veins in her neck popping, but her eyes are locked in. At attempt 453, she gets to 96%. The pressure of the last 10% of this level are getting to her hard, and at around 487 attempts, her mandatory hour is up. She does continue playing for an extra 2 hours. However, I wasn't home at the time. I had to go out and hang out with friends, and I wish I could have stayed home a little bit longer, because at attempt 516, she finally beat Back on Track and could finally move on to Poltergeist. Back on Track is one of my favorite levels, so it really hurt when she rated this level a 4 out of 10. I think she's just bitter. The level's great. Moving on to Poltergeist. This again introduces a new mechanic, that being the yellow jump orb. She initially tries to jump the 4 spikes at first, and then obviously when she realizes, oh, you can't make that jump, she has to click the new scary thing, the orb. This is again perfect for teaching the new mechanics. This is something I think RobTop does pretty well for like a majority of his levels, and surprisingly enough, she actually really likes the yellow orbs, even though she actually previously hated the jump pads, which I think is a bit backwards because I feel like the jump pads are way easier. And at 21 attempts into the level, she was already at 50% progression, which is crazy improvement over the last 2 levels. When it comes to the flying part in this level, at first she seemed to really like it. She wasn't struggling too hard and she really liked the vibe of it, but over time she started to grow to hate it because she actually started dying here quite a bit, and she ended her day at 162 attempts on Poltergeist, finally getting up to 62% progression. Also, this is totally unrelated to the video, but I have to add this in there. As soon as I'm not around, she starts stimming like the most autistic little child I've ever fucking heard in my entire life. Just listen to some of this shit.
I'm not playing anymore.
Alright, back to the video. Again, I wasn't here for the last 2 hours, so I'm just going based on what she's told me and what I've seen in the recordings. So unfortunately, we're just gonna have to move on to day 3. By attempt 186, we had bumped up a whole 2%, up to 64% progression. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's just the fact that we quickly got back up to where we left off, especially after an entire day's rest. After a few attempts, it seemed pretty clear that she was really struggling with the specific 62% spot. She was consistently jumping where there was no point to, and I can literally see her neck tensing again. I'm scared she's going to start yelling again. However, by attempt 199, she gets all the way to 75%. Huge progress here. And by this point, she's barely dying at the start now. She's easily breezing all the way to the 60% plus mark. However, 8 attempts later, I had to force her to take a break because she started to look like she was going to break something, and everything around her was really expensive. At attempt 220, she was consistently getting to 75% and dying, and it would take her 17 more attempts to finally push past 75% to finally reach 78%. And she pulls out a classic line from the Hades video, "I felt that one in my uterus." Again, I don't know what it is with her and her uterus, but she's feeling a lot of things in there, and none of them are good. I think at this point of the challenge, it's pretty clear, again, that 90% of her deaths are from waiting too long with her clicks and jumping too late. She needs to build up the confidence to actually take that jump earlier instead of waiting to the very last second. Or, hear me out, just use the fucking hold button. I did ask her why she doesn't use the hold button instead of just clicking, and she says that it's because when she uses the hold button, she will hold it too late. As in, she'll just forget to unhold the button, which to me is just insane. How do you forget to unhold the... Never mind. She seems to be comfortable with just tapping, which is fine. It doesn't seem like it's working out for her. By attempt 249, she finally reached 82% on her final attempt for her mandatory hour. Unfortunately, she decides not to play overtime today, as she's had enough of the game and is seeing shapes and colors. Something I think all of us have done at this point. Also, just a quick note, when we woke up the next morning, she was frustrated because she looked at me and said, "The game has made its way into my fucking brain." She had a dream about Geometry Dash. She came into today pretty pessimistic, but against all odds, after 6 attempts, she actually beat Poltergeist. Her heart was pumping in her chest. She managed to fluke 82% to 100%. Her final rating of Poltergeist is actually 7.5. So this is her highest rated level yet. She actually loves this level. And that officially moves us on to Dry Out, the 4th level. In only 7 attempts, she already gets up to 36%. She does say that the red was making her panic for some internal reason. And as soon as she gets to that upside down part, the freak out was immediate. She was not a fan of that at all. Of course, this is the new mechanic introduced. And the way, again, it's introduced, it gives you enough time to get used to what's happening, with a lot of blank space for your brain to register what's happening before they throw obstacles at you. By attempt 21, she finally gets back to the upside down bit and gets up to 41%. She doesn't do too bad given how much she panicked earlier, but she's still overthinking it way too much. Only 7 attempts later, she goes up another 4% and says, "I don't like the screen flip." She really fucking hates this bit. And after another 14 attempts, she finally gets past 45%, a spot along with 6% that she was really struggling with, and finally gets to 48%. Not a huge improvement, but at least it's something. And it takes her up until attempt 71 to even hit 49%. It's only 1 extra percent, but goddamn is it something. She does say at this point that all I want is to hit 50% or else I'll go crazy. I think every Geometry Dash fan has done this, where they put a specific goalpost in mind for the day, and if they don't hit that, they'll lose their fucking mind. And she would actually get this goal by attempt 98, finally going all the way to 63%. But just like most other Geometry Dash fans, she doesn't even feel satisfaction by reaching her goal, and she just wants more. The greed truly is insatiable. And not long later, she was kind of just getting in her own head, and she was dying right at the start multiple times. It was getting real bad. It was like 60 full attempts of just dying at the start and never really getting back up to that 60% mark. She was reaching levels of crash out that she hadn't before, and this would plague her for quite a while. By attempt 154, her mandatory was up. She had sore eyes, a sore head, she hanged in the towel, she was done. So she left today frustrated and annoyed. I don't really see why though. She's made a pretty decent amount of progression, especially for the amount of attempts she did today. I think she's just expecting to get better, even though the levels are getting harder. I don't know, she's definitely overthinking stuff, so let's hope day 5 is maybe a little bit better. Will she beat Dry Out tomorrow, or will she, is this the limits? Day 5 is a pretty big day, so sit the fuck down and strap the fuck in. Starting us off, she keeps dying at 46% and 10% today. I'm not quite sure why, but it is extremely frustrating to her. I'd still say that 90% of her deaths are because she's tapping instead of holding. She's got less than great timing, so holding would definitely help. By attempt 252, she has to take a break because her vision's getting blurry and she's getting overly frustrated to the point that it's jeopardizing her gameplay and she's not progressing. This was a straight 100 attempts of making no progress and just getting more and more frustrated. So after our break, we finally came back and she was getting out of her rut. Now coming back with a clear mind, she was finally getting past that 45% consistently, but she was also really struggling with the 48 to 50% mark. Although approximately 17 attempts later, for the first time in 181 attempts, she actually gets a new high of 67% right before the ship part. And get this, only one attempt later, she gets to and finishes the entire ship part, pushing all the way to 87%. Such massive progression. Oh, you thought we were done? Get fucked. One attempt later, she makes more progression, pushing to 91%. This woman, only a few attempts ago, looked like she was about ready to give up for the day. But I see it in her eye, that glimmer. She knows she can beat this now. Because by attempt 313, she pushes forward and with all of her might finally beats the level. And this is right as her mandatory hour had completed. She had no obligation to keep pushing forward, but with her new excitement after beating Dry Out, she pushes forward onto base after base. Also, she actually rated Dry Out an 8 out of 10, which is surprising to me because this is the one she got the most frustrated with. After literally one attempt, she was already up to 21% on the level. Clearly, her past experiences are aiding her greatly. Obviously, base after base doesn't actually introduce anything new, it just takes all the previous mechanics and tests your skills. So, not having to worry about anything new, by attempt 4, she jumps all the way to 40% progression. And only 4 attempts after that, she pushes to 47%. She's not even struggling with the start of this level at all. She's getting up to 35% plus every single run. Although one part that she is actually starting to struggle with is the 45% mark. Clearly a new nemesis on our hand. There's at least 1 or 2 every level. However, by attempt 26, she does push past to 51%, and only 6 attempts later, gets to 62%. Although she completely panics in the ship part, despite liking the game mode, the difficulty spike is definitely present. She wasn't prepared to actually have to try in the ship part. Although in the next attempt, she actually pushes to 69%. She's making such quick progression this time that it's making me smile a little bit. And it doesn't end there. 6 attempts later, it makes another huge leap all the way to 96%. It is so clear to me that she is gonna beat this under 100 attempts. I can see the frustration in her face, but it is completely overshadowed by the utter and complete determination in her eyes. After a while, it's clear that she's making no progress really, because 77% was fucking her hard. I think the stress of getting so close in such a short period of time is getting to her, as she feels obligated to beat the level quickly now. So we take another break to try and combat this, and guess what? When we come back at attempt 72, she beats the fucking level. I think I was more excited about this than she was. I'm way too invested in this shit. She rated base after base an 8.5 out of 10, by far her highest rated level yet. And that moves us on to an absolutely iconic level in Geometry Dash, Can't Let Go. For those who don't know, Can't Let Go, this is where the boys become men. This is the skill jump. It's not insane, but it's definitely present. I like to consider Can't Let Go the first real level of Geometry Dash where the tutorial was basically ended. And given that in her first attempt, she literally only gets to 4% and immediately says, oh, I'm gonna hate this one, I think I'm right. However, by attempt 9, she does lock in and manage to get to 17%. At around attempt 30, she finally progresses a bit and pushes to 19, but these 3 orbs are gonna fuck with her brain for a while. It takes her 7 attempts to actually hit the right orb. Although when she does hit the right orb, she immediately panics and ends up dying. I swear this woman has no faith in her own abilities. She also outwardly says to herself, oh, this one may not add anything new, but it's all about timing. This woman understands Geometry Dash more than Geometry Dash plays, which is crazy. She also isn't a fan of the music yet, which hurts my soul because this is one of my favorite Geometry Dash songs. Oh, and by the way, 17% is definitely her nemesis for this level. She fucking hates this spot. But by attempt 68, after a while of barely getting past the star, she finally pushes her record to 31%. And only 2 attempts after that pushes again to 40. And 9 attempts after that pushes to 45%. And get this, only 2 attempts after this, she pushes to 50% already halfway through this level. For some reason, she feels as though she's doing terribly, but I only believe that's because she did so well in the last level. And something that I thought was pretty funny is that at attempt 109, she says, oh, I'll just do one more attempt. It in fact was more than one more attempt, all the way to 124 attempts, where she finally stops playing an hour and 10 minutes over her time limit. How will she do over the next 2 days? Let's find out. It doesn't take her long at all to actually get right back into her groove. She's completely determined to beat Can't Let Go today because tomorrow she has to move on to some custom levels. 17% is still very much a problem for her. She absolutely loves dying here. But by attempt 176, after a while of no progress while yapping and not even paying attention to what she's actually doing, she manages to jump all the way to 72%. Easily breezes through the ship part. However, it's of course the upside down part that completely fucks her. She really struggles with this game mode. Only approximately 20 attempts later, she finally does push to 74%, realizing that this part is definitely going to be tricky and mentally destroy her. She does believe at this point that it'll take a little over 300 attempts for her to beat it. I personally think it's going to take her about 500 plus attempts. It's going to be another back on track scenario. And there's no diss to her, this is probably the hardest level yet. It's definitely a big skill jump, so it's going to take a while to get over that learning curve. However, after 35 minutes at 225 attempts, she decides to take a break and get a sweet treat before she loses her mind. And after 285 attempts, finally hitting 81% progression, she does finally stop playing for the day. She decides not to continue past her mandatory hour and has just thrown in the towel for day 6. Which means that tomorrow we're moving on to some custom levels. Today we're doing 8 levels for a minimum of 15 minutes each. We're starting with Airborne Deity. It's a nice easy level with some decent level decoration, something that she hasn't been quite introduced to yet. By attempt 2, she's already getting to and panicking at the gravity ball part. This is her first time seeing it, and I specifically chose this level because it's nice and easy for her to learn. And it only takes her about 9 attempts to figure out how the gravity ball works and get more comfortable with it. She doesn't like the theme of the level. She blames it for distracting her. She actually doesn't mind the gravity ball gameplay, although it's still something new, which is scary. After 15 minutes, she has a total of 50 different attempts, and the maximum she gets to is 66%, although she rates this level an 8.5 out of 10. She really does like it. She's just not a big fan of the theme of the level. Our next level was Permaslot Pathway. This is her first introduction to High Deco, and also the green arrow. I had to break my rule and explain to her how it works. Although once she actually learned how it works, she didn't mind it, she didn't like it, it was just kind of there. Also, the camera zoom out made her completely panic and die at the world's easiest ship section. She does not like this new feature at all. Although, she actually loves the feature of bouncing off the walls. I thought this was something that she was going to hate and it was going to overwhelm her a lot, but she actually really likes it. And she beats this level after only 8 attempts. She rates this one a 9 out of 10. She absolutely loved the decoration, her absolute favorite level yet. Which moves us on to Rooftops. This is a slight difficulty spike, but it's also got really high decoration and some really interesting gameplay. This is her first introduction to robots, so I once again had to break my rule to explain it to her. She does love the robot, and she even says that it reminds her of Jetpack Joyride, which I kind of get it, I guess. She really likes the decoration and the theme of the level, and only just realized after 10 minutes of playing that there are arrows that tell her where to jump. This is also her introduction to green orbs. She thinks that they're really trippy and doesn't really like them. The moon part, aka I think the main appeal of this level, she loves. She thinks it's super cool. Overall, she rated this an 8 out of 10, and she beat the level after 19 attempts. Moving on to Blast Processing. I picked this level mostly because it introduces the Wave, a game mode that I think most of the Geometry Dash community absolutely loves. This is also her introduction to the blue orb, which makes her completely panic and question everything. She was not a fan of this at all. When she finally gets to the Wave, she immediately freaks out. This is the most scared I think I've ever seen this woman playing any game ever.
Oh, there you go.
Oh!
Sort of like the ship.
No. No. What the fuck was that? Why do you make it look easy?
She does like the design and the vibe of the level, but it is a little harder than she's used to. By 10:32, she does get to 20% and is starting to get the hang of the wave, but she absolutely hates it still. To around 50 attempts in this, she starts saying, "I'm tasting colors and I was definitely dropped as a child." She finishes off her time with a total of 82 attempts and gets to a max of 28% progression right at the end of the wave part. She rates it a 7.5 out of 10. She appreciates the level, she thinks it looks cool, but it's just not in her skill range to enjoy, and she also really hates the wave. This moves us on to Sky Advanced, and she's like a kid on Christmas. As soon as the level starts, she's got eyes of wonder. It takes her a while to figure out the controls, and it doesn't like how janky and awkward they are, but she thinks that the level is super cool. Obviously, this is a wildly different game mode. Taking advantage of Update 2.2's different mechanics and using the platform mode, it only takes her a minute to beat. Well, she thought this was extremely fun and unique, and she rated it a 9 out of 10. Personally, I think that this level is really cool and unique, but it's way too janky to be any more than like a 7 for me. Downpour City is more of a classic side-scroller, and she, again, doesn't like the controls. They're pretty janky, but she absolutely loves the checkpoint system. This is something that she's been complaining about the entire time. Took her around 4.5 minutes to beat, and she gave it a quick little 9 out of 10. I think when it comes to Geometry Dash, the platform game mode is definitely more her style. It's less stressful. I've decided that we're gonna throw 2 demon levels at her and just well, I'd say see how she does, but I think we all know how this is gonna go. We're starting her off with Deadlocked. And as soon as she gets to the first wave part, she gets so angry at me that it's not even funny. She gets so overwhelmed by the amount of deco and things happening that her rage is reaching a boiling point, and I fear that my relationship is on the line. She even says that all Geometry Dash fans were definitely dropped on their heads as babies to enjoy this game. At exactly attempt 155, we also found this really weird glitch. I'm just adding this in here for fun. And it took her 171 attempts to actually get past the mini wave part, and we both got way too excited at this. And after 219 attempts, she gets to a maximum of 4%, and she rates it a 5 out of 10, which was honestly shocking. I thought it was just getting a lower score. I then absolutely showed her up gameplay-wise first try, and this just made her more mad at me. And then I moved her on to the level that I'm currently trying to beat, 9 circles. Look, there's really not too much to say here. She got really mad at me again for putting her in this scenario. She does a total of 136 attempts before just straight up refusing to continue, and the furthest she got was 7%. She rated this one a 4 out of 10. She was not happy. Again, I had to show her up, of course, and I had to leave the room. I thought she was gonna punch me. Hi, it's me again. So that's the video. We're done. If you're wondering what she actually rated the entire game overall, she rated it a 6 out of 10. Definitely her lowest rated so far. And putting it up on the leaderboard with the other 2, it is at the bottom right now, although she has, since I've been editing this, been continuing to play it. Obviously not for a super long time, but she does occasionally jump on and play it for like 10-15 minutes. So that answered the question, will she continue playing this after the video? She says maybe, but it's a yes. And also, do I recommend this for people that aren't usually gamers? If you don't have a bunch of problems with colors and brightness, absolutely. Unfortunately, my girlfriend Jess, that was a big contingency. She was constantly getting a sore head because of the gameplay and the bright lights. But if you're just a new player and you don't have any medical issues like that, absolutely, we both recommend this game for new players. It does really well at teaching you the new mechanics. It's a slow incline in difficulty, and the skill ceiling is pretty much infinite. The reason the game is so addictive is because there's always a new challenge and always something harder to beat. So absolutely, this is recommended, but only if you hate yourself. I don't really have much else to say. I still don't know how to end videos. I don't think I'll ever learn at this point, but you know, we're just gonna roll with it. Hey.